So you have a middle round pick in your upcoming fantasy football draft, somewhere between the 105 and the 108, and you want to know how you can come away from your draft feeling good about the team that you drafted and with a good chance to win your fantasy football championship. The good news for you is I've been drafting team after team after team all offseason, and I've come up with the perfect strategy for these middle round picks. So I want to take some time today to talk about the strategy, some of the ADP pockets and those players that you should be targeting within those pockets, and the ideal roster construction for a team being drafted in the middle round. So without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about this middle round pick strategy. Now, I heard the feedback on the last video, and I understand I was using Underdog ADP, which is tailored towards best ball, 3 wide receiver. It's where I do a ton of my drafts. Now, that being said, I have changed the ADP we're using for today. We are going to be using 4for4 ADP, and this should be great for your home leagues because it's pulling ADP data from Yahoo, NFL, CBS, ESPN, Sleeper, all of those platforms that you're likely going to be using for that home draft. So the ADP should be a lot more relevant in today's episode. So don't worry, the feedback was good. I love the constructive criticism, and that will only make for better videos. But let's talk about the strategy that we're going to use here. And this is going to be a little bit of a modified hero running back, maybe a modified anchor running back, whichever you want to call it. But that's kind of the strategy that we're going to go with. And the reason why is because we want to get elite players at each of the positions other than that running back 2 spot. Now, this strategy is still going to allow us to get an elite running back 1 that has some high volume, some high upside, and we're going to be able to get elite at all of the other positions, wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end in the early and middle rounds. So that's kind of the strategy we're using today. Let's talk about how we'll implement it starting with round 1. Now, in round 1, we are going to want to get an elite wide receiver on our team. And the reason why is the ADP is heavily swayed towards the wide receivers in this round. There is a top tier. You have guys in this round like CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and A.J. Brown. Now you'll see there's a couple guys bolded. Those are most likely the picks that you will have available for you in that middle part of the round. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra. We want one of these guys because once the tier breaks and we're out of this elite tier of wide receiver, there is a massive tier of guys that all have similar upside and they don't have the upside of these players. So we want to grab one of these while we have the chance. Take your pick, kind of pick your flavor here, but at the end of the day, just make sure you walk away with one of these guys. Now, as I mentioned, this was a modified hero running back, anchor running back type of build, so we can't go too far without drafting our running back. We are going to grab the workhorse running back here in the second round. Now, all of these guys that are on the board here at this current ADP, they're probably going to be worth it for you. You have guys like Saquon Barkley, who's going at the 202, Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, and Isaiah Pacheco. Now, the 3 players that I did bold, I think they are probably the most likely picks for you here in the second round, and they're probably the best picks for you in the second round just because these players have PPR upside, they have pass catching ability, and they have the volume that you want to see out of the running backs that we are going to have here in the second round. Saquon also possesses that, but because he's going at the 202, you're likely not going to get a chance to get him unless you maybe have that 205, but even then it's a pretty far chance. So I think targeting a guy like Kyron or Etienne does give you that PPR upside and that bell cow ability because there really is nobody else in those backfields that we expect to take touches from them without them getting injured. Now, moving on to round 3, again, here's the ADP for these. This is that massive tier of wide receiver I was talking about, and what we want to target is one of these guys. We're going to be looking for a high upside wide receiver, specifically in a high scoring offense. That is the idea with this pick. And the reason why we're going to do that is because the high scoring offense, it is going to help us increase our ceiling from our wide receiver 2 role. Now, you have guys in here like Mike Evans, Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp, and Michael Pittman Jr. You see in that middle part of that round, that's kind of actually where I like the most value. Collins with the Texans, the San Francisco 49ers offense with Ayuk and Samuel, even that Dolphins offense with Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp. I like those guys the most. They give you a lot of upside and they give you really high wide receiver 2 type of ceilings. I think getting any of these guys is great. If you can't get one of them, which you should most likely be able to get one of them every single time just because of how many of them are in this round, you can grab a Michael Pittman if you want. He's probably still going to give you those high-end wide receiver 2 numbers you want. So whatever you like in this round, just go ahead and pick it. They're all going to be good picks, but there maybe is a little bit of crossover with Nico Collins. There is a round later on that we'll talk about where we could target Tank Dell. So if you don't want the crossover and maybe you prefer Dell at a later draft cost, maybe you don't take Nico here. But really, like I said, it's up to you. Pick your flavor, but just make sure you get a high upside wide receiver 2 in a good offense. Now, round 4 is where we're really going to diversify our team from the competition, while everybody else in your league is going to be targeting wide receivers and running backs and trying to get all of those players players that they can in those positions, we're going to move over and we're going to take an elite tight end that's going to give us a significant positional advantage at the tight end position. Now, this is one of my favorite ranges to draft that elite tight end this year. You have guys like Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, and Dalton Kincaid, who I think all have an argument to give you the overall tight end one type of upside this year. And so whichever one of these guys you want to grab, you're more than likely to choose that. I think I'm going to lean more towards Trey McBride because I am going to be targeting Kyler in a later round. And with that being said, that would give us a stack down the road as well at the onesie position. So Trey McBride, he's my number one. Then if you can't get him, you can go with Andrews or Kincaid. It doesn't really matter to me. So just make the selection of an elite tight end here and you'll have a very solid foundation, especially at that tight end spot, that's going to give you a positional advantage over your league. Now, round 5, we're going to go right back to that wide receiver well. Like I said, this is a hero running back build, so we're going to keep adding to that wide receiver room, building a very solid room of wide receivers. And here's where we can get another upside wide receiver. You have guys in this round like Malik Neighbors, Tank Dell, T. Higgins, George Pickens, some of my favorites in the round. And then you also have Amari Cooper and Zay Flowers if you like those guys as well. But like I mentioned, Dell, Neighbors, Higgins, Pickens, these are the picks for me. And I think you look at them, Neighbors obviously should see a ton of targets this year. Dell, good offense. Higgins, good offense. Maybe some more targets than he got last year with less rushing attempts in Cincinnati now that Joe Mixon is out of town. And George Pickens, assuming Brandon Ayuk does not get traded there in the next day or two, should have a lot of targets there in Pittsburgh as well. Now, obviously, your first 4-round picks are probably going to dictate kind of which way you go here because Jamar Chase was potentially a player you could draft in the first round. If you drafted him, you probably don't want Higgins here in the 5th. And the same thing I said with Nico Collins. If you got him in the 2nd round, you probably don't want Dell in the 5th either. So that might dictate where you want to go in this round. But outside of that, all of these guys should have a lot of targets coming their way and should be in high volume offenses. So all of these guys should be worthy of a draft selection for you here in the 5th. Now, I said it earlier, but round 6 is where we want to grab an elite quarterback, and more specifically, we want to target Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is the ultimate smash pick for me here in this round, no matter what, because I currently have Kyler Murray as a top 5 quarterback in my rankings. We're getting him here as QB9. So not only are we going to get a guy who has the rushing upside, the high ceiling, an elite positional advantage, but we're also getting him as a discount. This is a no-brainer pick for me, and you can potentially stack him with the Trey McBride pick that we got earlier in the round. Now, if for some reason Kyler Murray is not there, you see he's going at the 6'10", so you should have a good chance at getting him. But if for whatever reason he's not there, you can go with a Dak Prescott who has a lot of passing volume and a good offense, or a Jordan Love who has a lot of passing volume and a good offense. Either of those picks are good for you as well, but make sure you attack an elite quarterback, giving you a positional advantage there at that quarterback position. Now, finally, we have the elite QB, we have the elite tight end, we have an elite wide receiver room. We can finally grab our running back too. We waited long enough. Round 7, that's where I want to find a guy that has a high floor and can give us some safe running back 2 numbers. Now, some running backs in this round that can do that are Raheem Mostert, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, maybe even Jalen Warren if you want. But those 3 that I mentioned at first, those are the top favorites for me in this round. I think if you can come away with a DeAndre Swift or a Najee Harris, that gives you the safe floor and some additional upside at that running back 2 spot. Again, it's going to be a little bit of pick your flavor, and this is going to be a position where you're going to have to kind of add a lot of depth later throughout the draft to kind of supplement waiting a little bit longer here. So if for whatever reason those 3 guys that we mentioned are gone, again, Jalen Warren, he's a similar bet to Najee Harris if you want to make that bet. Or Jonathan Brooks, you may have to wait a little bit because he's not expected to play to start the year, but he could be a second half league winner for you if he does come on healthy for the Carolina Panthers. Now, we're not going to stick at that running back position too long. Round 8, we're going right back to the wide receiver. We're looking for our wide receiver 4 on our roster, and the reason why is because this current ADP pocket, you see guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Watson, Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, Jordan Addison, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is the ultimate round to make your pick at the next potential breakout wide receiver. So who you want to select here, it's up to you, your call. Who do you think is breaking out at the wide receiver position? You got a bunch of year 2 guys and rookie wide receivers as well. These are the most prime candidates for breakout. Now, if I had to make my selection, I'm probably going to look more at the year 2 guys, Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like those players a little bit more, but if you want to go with one of the rookies, Xavier Worthy, he's in a high passing offense with Patrick Mahomes, or Rome Odunze has the high talent, high type of draft capital that you want to see, but maybe a little bit crowded wide receiver room could be really good for you breaking out in the second half of the year. Now, no matter who you pick, just make sure it's one of these guys, because hitting on a breakout wide receiver like this here as your wide receiver 4, if you pick the right guy, it's going to make your team so dominant down the back half of the year. And now here's where we really start hammering home the running backs. Round 9 and 10, I want to grab 2 running backs to add some depth to my running back room. There's a big chunk of guys here. Really, the goal is going to be adding high value handcuffs, maybe some guys that are in some ambiguous running back situations like the Cowboys, maybe the the Broncos, the Titans, those types of running back rooms where there could be two guys, it could be a committee, maybe somebody has to beat out the other guy to break out this year. You want to target those situations. Or you could maybe even look at some of the younger running backs, rookie running backs that have the talent, but maybe they just need the opportunity, and we don't know where the opportunity is going to come from yet. Most of these guys are probably going to see an increase in production as the year goes on. They might not start off hot, but that's okay because we're not expecting your running back 1 or your running back 2 to be injured to start the year. So we can wait a little bit of time for these guys to develop. Some of my favorite picks, especially in the 9th round, are guys like Tajay Spears, Javonte Williams, and Devin Singletary. All of those guys should have immediate roles right away. They might be in committees. Singletary probably not in a committee, but that being said, they should have roles and they could increase in production as the year goes on, especially if there's injuries in their current backfield. Now in round 10, you could take some upside shots on some rookie running backs. There's guys like Blake Corum. Maybe you drafted Kyron Williams and you just want to handcuff Kyron Williams, or you could take shots on Ezekiel Elliott to maybe lead the Dallas Cowboys offense, Chase Brown to maybe win that job there in Cincinnati, or Trey Benson or Jerome Ford to end up having more production this year as the year goes on. But once you grab 2 of those guys in rounds 9 and 10, that should leave you with 4 running backs on the roster. And moving on to round 11, that's where you're going to be able to hopefully look at the wide receiver position. Now, I am going to say that round 11 and 12 is where you can look at it. I just prefer round 11, and that's why I'm going to say round 11 is where you look at them, because there's wide receivers in this round like Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and Romeo Doubs, who I think are in ambiguous wide receiver situations where Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir can maybe be competing for the number 1 wide receiver target in that Buffalo Bills offense with Josh Allen. And you have Romeo Doubs, who could be on a very good offense competing as the wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 1, maybe wide receiver 3. I don't know. If you ask Jordan Love, he says all of them are wide receiver 1s. He's a good pick in this round as well. So grab one of those guys. I think they're the better selections. And then in whichever round you're not drafting the wide receiver, whether that be 11 or 12, just grab another running back. We're going to keep adding depth to that running back room. Now looking at 12 and 13, because as I mentioned, round 11 is where I like the wide receiver. 12 and 13, 2 more running backs. Keep getting the running backs. Get it to a total of 6 running backs on the roster. And we're using the same strategy as we used last time. Ambiguous situations, high-end handcuffs, young guys. Try and find those breakout players at the running back position. Now in this range, you're going to have guys like J.K. Dobbins, Algier, Marshawn Lloyd, Ty Chandler, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, Jaleel McLaughlin, Antonio Gibson, Jalen Wright, and Kendra Miller. But my favorites of the bunch, obviously, they're in the bold: Marshawn Lloyd, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, and Jaleel McLaughlin. Now, if you did get Jonathan Brooks as the running back too, maybe you take Chuba Hubbard and you secure that running back room there while you wait on Jonathan Brooks. Maybe if you took Javonte Williams, you handcuff him with Jaleel McLaughlin. Maybe if you don't take Javonte Williams, you want to take Jaleel McLaughlin to make the bet on that ambiguous room and try and find another starter in this offense. But no matter which way you go, 2 running backs, that's the way to go. Get your room to a total of 6, leaving you with plenty of options to start and stream throughout the year while we try and wait for some injuries and some breakouts to happen in the running back position. So now we've kind of filled out this roster. We have the elite QB, the elite tight end, the wide receiver depth, the running back depth. Most of you are probably going to have a defense and a kicker in your leagues. Now, if you're playing in 15-round drafts, the last 2 spots, round 14 and round 15, are where I want to take that defense and the kicker. I'm probably taking my defense before the kicker, and there's really no strategy to which defense I'm taking. I really just like to look at the early season schedule, find which defenses have a soft schedule to start the year. But the reality is I'm most likely going to be streaming this position. So whoever I draft as my defense or my kicker, I'm not going to finish the year with them because I will stream it and stream the matchups for the majority of the year. But if you want to find somebody who has a soft schedule to start the year, maybe that's a defense you can target. Some of the defenses that do have soft schedules are going to be the Niners, the Bengals, the Seahawks, the Jets, and the Browns. So maybe look at those defenses if you want. Now, obviously, if you play more than 15 rounds, make sure that in the rounds that are not the last 2 picks, you're just drafting more running backs and wide receivers. We don't need a backup quarterback. We don't need a backup tight end because we have elite players at those positions. We can stream on the bye week if we need somebody to fill in. But no matter when your draft ends, just make sure your last 2 selections are the defense and the kicker. Wait until the very end for those 2 spots. Now, I'll kind of just do a quick recap for you guys for this strategy, just so you guys can kind of have the overall summary. And as I'm doing that, I'll also throw some teams up on the screen where I drafted from the 5 spot, the 6 spot, the 7 spot, and the 8 spot, proving that you can use this strategy no matter which selection you're drafting from, and showing you the teams and how they look at the end of this draft. So as you know, first round, elite wide receiver, that's what we want to do. Target one of those elite guys like Chase, Jefferson, Amon-Ra. Round 2, we're going to find our workhorse running back, an ETN, a Kyron Williams, and Isaiah Pacheco. And then round 3, we're going back to the wide receiver with a high upside wide receiver 2 in a high scoring offense. Texans, Niners, Rams, something like that. That's where we're looking. down. Now, round 4 is where we go with the positional advantage at the tight end position. I think that tier of Andrews, McBride, and Kincaid, that's where you want to target the elite tight end. Make sure you come away with one of those guys. Round 5, we're taking a high upside wide receiver 3, maybe somebody like T. Higgins, George Pickens, Tank Dell, one of those guys to come away with. Again, round 6, the positional advantage, aka the Kyler Murray round if he's available. Smash pick Kyler Murray. If you can't get him, Dak Prescott, or maybe a guy like Jordan Love, or I even had Joe Burrow fall to me in one of these rounds, so you could go Joe Burrow here if he falls as well. Round 7, we make sure we lock up that high floor running back 2. Guys like Raheem Mostert, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris are my favorites. Round 8, we're trying to pick the next breakout wide receiver. You look at guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, just a young guy that can break out. Take your shot. If you hit, it's going to do wonders for this team. And then the rest of the way, we're pretty much filling out a bunch of running backs. We went 4 running backs in the next 5 rounds, that 11th round being the round that we took the wide receiver, trying to target that Buffalo Bills offense. But really, you're trying to fill out the running back room the rest away just to give you a ton of shots at that running back position, because the running back 2 will probably be one of the weaker positions on our lineup, so having a lot of options to fill in if there is an injury or anything else like that can give us the advantage. And last but not least, make sure you wait on the defense and the kicker until the last 2 picks. Target a defense with a soft matchup to start the year, and that's probably the way that I would go. So now that we've hit the summary, that is all I have for you guys today. We did also do a version of this video for the early picks 1 through 4, just last week. So if you want to go check that out, go check it out. If you found this video entertaining or actionable and you think the strategy is going to help you out in your drafts, make sure to hit that like button. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because we will do the last part of this video, picks 9 through 12, here next week. So you guys have all of the picks covered with a good strategy from all of those picks. And if you haven't already, I do have a free Discord. It's linked in the description. I'm helping you guys with your fantasy football teams, answering any fantasy football questions you have about your drafts, trades, waivers, anything you got throughout the year. So make sure you go join that. Like I said, free to join, so no risk in doing so. And with that all out of the way, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next video. But until then, peace out.